Guys, if you've ever thought about firing your realtor, today we're going to tell you what typically pops up to make you think that, and do you have the contractual ability to do so?
You better get fired up.
Lissette, happy Monday. How you doing?
Happy Monday. How was your Father's Day, Joe?
My Father's Day was awesome, man. I got the best family, so I was spoiled to pieces. I loved it. How about your husband's?
Awesome. He had a great one. He was surrounded by family, and that really made a day.
He's a blessed guy, man. You got a beautiful family.
Thank you.
So today, guys, we're talking about firing your realtor, right? It happens often. Today, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the list side than the buy side, but we might delve a little bit into both. But sometimes you get a realtor that you think you're going to be happy with, and all of a sudden down the road, you find out, I'm not so happy with this realtor, right? So maybe the best place to start is what makes you want to fire your realtor. So Lissette, share with us some things that you've seen in the industry, maybe you've experienced, whatever, where some sellers have wanted to change a realtor.
I think just starting right off the top, the root of the problem a lot of times is communication. If your agent is not communicating with you, having poor communication, not getting back to you, not answering your phone calls, dropping the ball because the communication is not there, or maybe you guys are just not understanding what your wants and needs are, and they're not making the effort to meet those, that right there is a big red flag. Having good communication and understanding the agent from the agent side, what my buyer or my seller is looking for and what they need can solve so many problems down the road. So I would say communication is number one. Having an understanding and knowledge of the market. Maybe they just don't understand when they're looking at certain properties of what they could price your house for, and you could tell they're just unexperienced, or maybe they just don't know the area or your community well enough, and you're looking for maybe a more local agent that does understand your community. So that might be another reason why you don't feel comfortable with your agent. And I would say, again, just hitting it back to the communication, someone that's not on the ball, not getting the properties in front of you that you want to see, maybe not getting your offer out quick enough, and then you get beat out by other buyers because their agents are on it, or maybe their agents are a little bit more savvier and they're winning over those offers. A lot of times agents that are on their game and they know what they're doing, they'll lose out on offers as well, but they're making the effort and they know the steps to get their buyers there. Some agents may not have that knowledge. So those are some of the ones that come off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'd throw in there too with listing agents. Sometimes the seller is not happy with your marketing or your perceived marketing, right? And wink, wink, realtors, I think it's a great idea in your listing presentation. Literally show them, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D for you when it comes to marketing. And boom, you've got it in writing, right? Now, if you're following your plan, they can feel like, hey, they're getting out of you what they paid for. And you can feel like, hey, I'm doing everything I said I would do. If you don't have the communication piece in there, it's completely understandable that a stressed out seller is going to say, I don't care what you did. I want you to do more. Everybody wants more, right? So really getting it in writing protects everybody and it sets expectations. It's the way to go. And the last thing I'd mention is just personality clashes. There's different personalities. Sometimes I'm really analytical and you're really outgoing and boisterous, and those two just don't get along very well, or maybe the opposite, right? So any one of those reasons can cause you to want to find another realtor. It's understandable. So let's talk. I said I was going to focus on sellers, but I want to focus on buyers a little bit first. Let's talk about the contractual part, right? You've got what's called a buyer representation agreement or a buyer broker agreement. And it's a simple, is it 2 pages or 3 pages? Is it 3 pages?
I think it's two. I don't remember. Maybe 3.
Simple short document. And essentially what it says is, hey, buyer, here are all of the fiduciary duties that I owe you. I owe you this and this and this and this and this. So now you've got them financially, legally bound to you, where they owe you those things. So if they're not working in a timely fashion, if they're not giving you, they use the word accounting, if they're not going through all the different financial aspects of the deal with you, whatever it is, they're not delivering. So for you to get out of that deal, it would make sense, right? Once you sign that contract, though, it's very important to understand some things that I don't think are explained enough. In fact, I know it's not, because I see it in the market all the time. If Lissette, the buyer, comes to Joe, the buyer's agent, and says, Joe, you're my guy, let's go, and her husband both sign a buyer's agreement with me, she's promising to pay me whatever commission is located in Section 7, that's for Florida agents, Section 7 of that agreement. Okay. So in there, it's going to state a percentage of the sales price and possibly a dollar amount, right? And it could be both depending on. So you owe that, but then there's a sentence that says minus anything you're given. So if it says 3% and I show Lizette a home for 3%, yeah, she owes me 3%, but they're paying me 3%. So it washes out. She owes me nothing. If it says 3% and it's paying me out 2.5%, she would contractually owe me 0.5%. Now, a lot of agents don't charge that, but some do. You're going to want to ask, what happens if it's short? Are you going to charge me that, or are you going to let that ride, right? Make sure you ask that. Here's another thing. Lizette, with all the greatest intent, she loves me. I'm working hard for her. Got a great relationship. But all of a sudden, she doesn't want to bother me on Father's Day, right? So she goes out with her husband and they look at a builder's home or a first or they go to an open house, right? And they decide to put an offer in with whoever's representing that side. And they're thinking, Joe's going to represent us. Here's the thing. As an MLS agent, a listing agent, you owe the commission to whoever procures or gets the sale, right? So if Lizette and her husband went to the open house because the open house was on Zillow or some website, whatever, it doesn't matter, or the sign was out, Joe didn't procure that sale, right? The sign did or Zillow did, which was that agent at the open house. That agent doesn't have to pay Joe Rosen, right? Same with a builder. If the builder hadn't opened, they had an open house sign in, Lizette walks in, the builder or the builder's rep procured that sale, not Joe Rosen. So they would not owe me a commission in some of those cases, right? So as a realtor with a buyer brokerage agreement, I do have recourse against the buyer, which is Lizette. I can go back to her and say, hey, you owe me this 3% or whatever it is you put into your contract, right? Now, a lot of agents aren't going to do that, but it is there to protect them. It's important that that's communicated to you so you know that, right? Know that you've got that on there. So if you want to back out of that agreement, you're going to want to talk to the agent first. If you're not getting anywhere with the agent, you're not happy with it, you're going to want to go to the broker. But I will tell you this, have that conversation before you go to the open house, before you go to the builder's house, because if you do it after, in the eyes of the court, it's going to look like you just figured out what you had already signed and agreed to, and you're trying to back out of it. It's not going to be a good look, right? So try to get that done up front. So Lizette, explain to us a little bit in a listing agreement. What are some things that are included that I'd want to know as a seller that contractually build a relationship between me and my listing agent?
Well, first of all, you're going to have a timeline. So how long is that listing agreement for? Is it for 3, 6 months? Is it for a year? Depending on the market, we are seeing some longer listing agreements now than we did just last year. So understand your timeline and what that looks like. Now, if you are unhappy and you just really want to move on to the next agent and you feel more comfortable canceling that contract, there may be a fee associated with that. So when you're going to go sit down with your agent and sign this listing agreement, make sure you look at what that fee is. And are you comfortable paying that fee if you were to have to make that choice to cancel your listing agreement and start all over with a new agent?
Yeah, great points. And sometimes that fee can be zero. Sometimes that fee can be half of the commission. You have no idea, right? Generally speaking, I mean, I'll share with you what I do. I tend to put the cost of my photos in there. And I say this, hey, my intent is not to hold you hostage. If you love me, I want you to keep working with me. If you don't love me, or your mind just changes and you say, hey, I don't want to sell, I want you to be able to get out of this contract, right? So you can get out at any time, and all I'm going to charge you is the cost of the photos, right? Because I'm not making any money off of the photos. Yeah, I'm paying for leads, but whether I got your listing or not, I'm still getting leads that I can work with on other listings. So I'm not going to ask you for that. There's all kinds of marketing I do that I'm paying for, but I'm winning whether I have your listing or not on those things. But with the photos, I lose 100%. So with that, I need you to reimburse me. But that's a Joe Rosen thing. Other agents might charge you more, and you're going to want to know what that is before you sign that agreement, right? Also, once you're locked in, you are locked in. It's a two-way agreement. It's you agreeing with them, and it's them agreeing with you. So if you want to back out of that contract, I'll tell you, more than 50%, in my experience, of brokers are going to allow you to get out of that agreement, but not all will, right? So you want to be aware of that. And you're going to want to have some concrete support for whatever it is that you're asking for, right? So if you're going to go talk to Bob Anderson, the realtor. I hope there's not a Bob Anderson out there. Bob Anderson, the realtor, and you're not happy with him. And he says, hey, I'm not letting you out of this agreement. Yes, you have the recourse to go back to the broker. But when you go to the broker, you're going to want to show them what Bob is or isn't doing that's making you want to get out of the deal. If it's just, hey, I don't like Bob, that's going to be a challenge. But if you can say, hey, Bob hasn't called me back in 72 hours 3 times, that's not acceptable. Okay, that's an understandable reason, right? Because we do owe you fiduciary duties. One of those things is timeliness. And I would agree, although it's gray, I would agree that 72 hours 3 times, that's a little too much. If Bob can't keep up, maybe Bob needs to be fired, right? But that's a negotiation you've got to have with a listing brokerage. So make sure anything you want, you get into that agreement. Here's something you might want in there. An exclusion. Lisette's going to list her home with me, and her neighbor is, let's stick with Bob Anderson. Her neighbor's Bob Anderson, and she's been talking to Bob, and Bob says, hey, I might be willing to purchase your home. And, you know, I'm also a realtor. I know you want to list it with Joe Rosen, but would I be able to buy it and we'd save the commission? I'll do all the paperwork, blah, blah, blah. Lissette can say to me, the listing agent, Joe, I'm going to list it with you. We're going to do all those wonderful things you said. But if I sell it to Bob, I want to be let out of this agreement. Is that possible? I can agree. I can also disagree, but I can agree to write Bob Anderson in as an exclusion. So now I have the ability to market and sell the crap out of your property. But if Bob brings you an offer and you, Lissette, accept it, I'm out of the deal because I agreed to that exclusion, right? So if you guys have exclusions like that, some people think they got to wait months or weeks or whatever it is to see if Bob's going to pull the trigger. You don't. In fact, if you list it right now with Bob as an exclusion, sometimes that listing, getting it on the market, it's the thing that pushes Bob forward and motivates him to write up an offer for you. So, Lissette, is there anything I'm missing that you would say buyers and sellers need to think about when they're considering who they want to take on as their buyers or sellers agent, and how to get out of a contract if that's truly what they want to do?
Just off the top, just read everything through. And if you have any questions, make sure you address them up front. Read what you're signing when you're signing that buyer broker agreement. Read the listing agreement carefully. Take your time and understand what you're agreeing with. And with that said, also understand is there are ways to get out of these agreements. And it all starts also with a communication, with a talk. And if you have to go to the agent's broker and have that conversation with them to make it happen, maybe those are the steps you need to take. But just knowing your options and knowing, you know, you are not tied down to this person forever. And there is options of getting out of that agreement.
Beautiful. I'll end with this. If you can't get out of the contract, you can also negotiate some sort of middle ground, right? So if Bob's not calling back 3 times in a row and it took 72 hours plus each time, you can put in the contract, again, if you can negotiate it with the broker. But I would think most brokers would agree to this. Hey, Bob will get back to me within 24 hours of any email, text, or phone call. If not, I have the right to cancel the contract, no questions asked. A lot of brokers are going to sit down with Bob, the agent, and say, Bob, what do you got going on here? Why can't you call this person back within 24 hours? That's pretty reasonable. And they'll say, Bob, I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on you, and I'm going to sign this with this seller. You need to call them back within 24 hours. If you need help, you can call me, you can call another agent, but we as a collective brokerage need to provide great service to this client. Again, it's got to be negotiated, but most common sense brokers are going to say yes to something like that. So don't forget, you can negotiate too, right? Everybody can. Guys, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much. If you got questions, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook in the future, put them in the comments, and Lissette and or I will always get back to you. Lissette, I appreciate you joining me today.
Have a good one, guys.